Go ahead and call the Environmental Action Committee meeting to order. Let's get started with a round of introductions. My name's Alan Long, Ward 4 City Council member. And if you want to go this way?
Okay. Kelly McGulick, science teacher, science person.
Andrew Miles, Ward 4 Citizen at Large.
I'm Peter Niergarten, City Sustainability Director and the staff liaison to the Environmental Action Committee.
I'm Garnet Wise. I'm, I guess, one of the industry representative.
Connie Chris, I am Ward 1, member at large.
Richard Russell, Ward 1, member at large.
All right. And we have a couple more
Jeff
staff
Coles,
members.
I'm recycling, Director of Recycling and Trash Collection at the City of Fayetteville.
I'm Terry Gilliam, the Transportation Director for the City of Fayetteville.
Anyone else care to introduce themselves? They don't have to. Put you on the spot.
That's fine. I'm Chelsea Cross. I'm a graduate student at University of Arkansas. Just come and check things out.
Yay!
It'll never be the same. And I'm Elizabeth Bowen with the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission. I'll be giving you the presentation. I think item number 4.
Great. Thank you for being here. And
Ray Alexander, just general trouble.
yep. Usually, that's why we enjoy having you here. No, just kidding. Thank you for being here, everybody. All right. We'll get started with our agenda. Everybody had a chance to look at the agenda for the meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any suggested changes? Anything we left off? All right, Peter, do you want to get us started with the old business?
Sure. First item on old business is just an update for you all on the city's efforts on an invasive species policy or ordinance. I believe I mentioned in April that the city was looking at bringing a resolution of intent to City Council in May to evaluate the feasibility of an invasive species resolution or invasive species ordinance or policy. On May 5th, the City Council passed that resolution requesting that staff work with a group of stakeholders to develop a citywide policy or ordinance. And we committed to a stakeholder process that would work with a diverse group of stakeholders across the community over the next 6 to 8 months and bring back a recommendation to City Council by the end of the year. And looking at invasive species in kind of 3 areas, trying to eliminate or reduce the introduction of invasive species plants into the community, continuing and doing a better job of eradicating invasive species on public lands, and then also developing educational materials to accompany any city efforts or private property efforts that would assist landowners in identifying and eradicating invasive species that are on their property, and then helping them understand what native or non-invasive options might be available for either replacing those invasive species or purchasing at a gardener home center in place of an invasive species. We have done quite a bit of work since that May 5th meeting in formulating that group of stakeholders that is represented by scientists at the University of Arkansas, citizen groups, including the city's Urban Forestry Advisory Board, the city's Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Andrew Miles has agreed to participate as a representative for the city's Environmental Action Committee. We've got stakeholders from the nursery industry in the community, as well as landscape installers, and then some other citizen interested groups as well. And we're going to begin that stakeholder process with our first stakeholder meeting on next Tuesday, and begin that conversation and start talking about what that policy options would be, what other communities have done in the area of invasive species, what specific plants might be the most objectionable and most invasive for Fayetteville and should really be targeted for any kind of policy or ordinance that the city develops. So more to come on that as that process works its way forward, but just wanted to bring you all an update on that process. I did include in the packet of information for the meeting a copy of the resolution that the City Council passed and the supporting documentation that went along with that item when it went through City Council on May 5th. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if anyone has a question on this particular item. Sure.
Some years ago, the city had a herbicide committee
Mm-hmm.
to study the downside and application process of various pesticides. And there might be minutes, records of that. There are a few people, I think, left in town that were on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might behoove you to look into the history of work that's already been done in that area.
Yeah, Connie Edmondson shared with me that information that was done in,
Good.
I want to say 92, 93-ish.
Yeah, it was a very controversial issue.
Mhm.
Still is, as
Sure.
more information comes in on
Sure.
herbicides.
Okay. No other questions? Everybody's jumping up and down all at one time.
I'll make a comment. There was an editorial about that. Did you get to read that?
I did, yeah. It was very creatively written.
I thought so too. So anyway, I just thought if there was any, I'm sorry, any comment made on that. I mean, it seemed that the editorial was like, well, it might be a good idea as long as you don't make people do things they don't want to do. Did you get that? That was kind of the gist of it. It's been a while since I read it. Or am I giving them too much credit?
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily gleaned that piece so much out of it as they were poking, as much as I did my creatively written comment, as the fact that they poked fun at Fayetteville being, generally trying to be a very inclusive community in terms of including people of all different, cultures and
Yeah.
races and ideas. But how dare we target specific species that we may not necessarily.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, that
rather
too.
creative.
That would,
Mhm.
I didn't think that was, okay. I don't know what I would have given it as a grade. But anyway, I got the impression they were just saying, okay, as long as you don't make anybody do anything. If you get down to the political part of it.
Sure,
then,
and certainly they're.
get out of the creative part. Anyway, that's all. Just a comment.
I just have a question, I might have missed it. Where did you say the educational materials would be placed?
I think that yet to be determined, but likely they would be included on our city's website, available through our Parks and Recreation Department, as well as, I would suspect, various other outlets around the community.
Okay. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about that in the upcoming months.
Yeah, definitely,
Finds out more.
definitely.
All right. Ready to move on to the
Sure.
next topic? I asked, we talked about this one at the last meeting, and Peter invited, I believe, Jeff Coles to come talk as well about this, the update to the city's contract with Kessler Consulting.
So
There's Aubrey. I was waiting on Aubrey.
I included,
I'm sorry.
I'm just giving you a hard time, Aubrey.
Doing short takes.
I included one slide in your packet that has, yeah, go ahead. Kind of a high-level update on where the city's at with the recycling master plan that we've contracted with Kessler Consulting out of Tampa, Florida, to help the city complete. I'd say we're somewhere nearing the halfway point-ish on the plan. And the preliminary results from the plan are that the city has completed a waste composition study, and a couple of you members, Andrew and who else came to the, Richard came out to the, Aubrey there as well, Aubrey? To the waste composition audit, yeah, out at the recycling and trash facility where they sorted the waste in the various different sectors. And so the results of that are in this pie chart right here, and you can see 11% of material that was collected in 2014 was composted through the city's compost facility. Another 9% was recycled through the city's recycling program. So combined, we had a 20% diversion rate in 2014. You can see over in this area right here, these two pieces of pie represent residential recyclables and then commercial recyclables, which total another 19% of material that was actually landfilled, but that 19% of material was recyclable under the city's current recycling program. So it just wasn't collected as part of the recyclables that the city collects. So that 19% of material was sent to the landfill. Another 19% of material over here represents residential compostables and commercial compostables, primarily food waste that was also landfilled but could be composted if the city had better ability to collect and compost material. And then there's, this rest of the pie, which is other materials, drop box material. A lot of that was is construction and demolition waste. Yeah, we have commercial waste and residential waste that's really not recyclable at all. And then these small orange slivers here represent other recyclables, such as 3 through 7 plastics or plastic bags, items that may be recyclable but are not currently recyclable under the city's recycling program. And so out of that waste comp study, we gleaned a few opportunities in areas where we want to continue to focus efforts moving forward in their multifamily recycling and commercial recycling, where we know we have a lower participation rate, particularly because the city's current curbside sort recycling program is not set up to scale real well for larger commercial and larger residential properties. So that focusing in that area is in an effort to get at this 19% of material that is recyclable under the city's current recycling program, but is still going to the landfill. The food waste, we're looking at doing a commercial food waste pilot with some restaurants in town to try and begin to evaluate the viability of getting at some of this 19% of pie over here that is food waste that's going to the landfill. Potentially looking at opportunities for construction and demolition waste, and then beginning to have dialogue with some of our regional partners about regional collaboration on recycling and opportunities there to collaborate with other communities. We had a public input session on April 6th.
Wow.
April early,
Yeah.
right in there.
Whenever the national championship game was, because they made it clear.
That's, yes, that we knew.
It was Monday night.
UVA was in the game.
We had 40 folks come out to that public input session and had really good dialogue with the community. We launched a public input survey on April 6th and closed that at the beginning of May, and we got 496 responses to that public input survey, so really good survey response. And we have Kessler Consulting scheduled to come back to town in early June and do an update presentation to City Council, as well as have some other stakeholder meetings in early June. And turn it over to Jeff if you've got anything
Well, I
to
think
add.
you've covered it, other than certainly we'd like to, even now, at this point, we don't want to rest on we don't want to sit on our hands, and we want to continue looking for ways to capture, particularly that 19% that you mentioned, that those recyclables that we're not on the commercial side, that we're not able to get, whether that's, scalable issues or not. You mentioned the food waste and the potential pilot project for food waste in our composting facility. Kessler's actually, I believe, their composting specialist is coming with them to discuss with us that process, and we plan to try and move forward with a small pilot at our existing composting facility, and adds food waste and an inoculant to that. So we're going to be discussing that with them when they're back here in June. So other than that, I think we pretty much covered where we are, and we are about halfway through that. We're about halfway through the process, I would say. So.
All right, I got a couple of comments. Just kind of so you know the direction when we hired Kessler, what we went into this with them was to come in, evaluate our current method, and bring us their expertise on anything that they could bring onto the table to evaluate the future. I mean, that goes from one end of it to the other. And what we've challenged them to do is to bring that to us in pieces, to break that down and show us how can we go about going from 20% towards the 80% that the council set as a mandate for us to be in 10 years. So when they come back with the final results, they're going, and what I've been pushing them to do is bring it back broken down into all those different pieces, whether that goes to construction debris, whether it goes to an organic processing. They're going to bring this consultant with them for that. They have offered to set us up to tour something. I think it was near Charleston, South Carolina, where they're running a program there where they're inoculating this with a certain inoculant, and it is having no odor whatsoever. That's why we're considering doing a small scale at our composting facility to test, one, is there any odor, and how well does it work? But you actually seed this this composted food material into our compost that we have, and essentially it cooks faster, better, and produces better compost. So that's just one option we're looking at, but we're having them bring us back all these things so that then when we go to council, we'll have these choices, and then based on which way the council wants to go, the cost of each individual type thing to initiate, and kind of give it as a buffet of things to choose from, not necessarily going with everything at once because there may not be the funding to be able to do that, but picking and choosing what are those best methods to get us to the highest level of recycling we can get. I mean, we're not going to have a plan and institute it next year and get 80%. It's going to be a build upon plan, I think, to be able to afford that and get it all initiated, because there could be a lot of capital cost related to how we go about this. But that's just that's the task we've given them, is to come back and give us this broke down in a way that y'all can pick and choose what you feel like is the greatest bang for our buck up front, which one is the most environmentally sensitive to do first, and work our way through it with the ultimate goal to get to 80% by 2025. So.
Yeah. Well, as Terry said, I'm sorry, this was coming forward, and we've been emphasizing the fact that ultimately this is a plan and not a study, not another study. So incrementally and moving forward, as Terry indicated, breaking this out into the tactical and the strategic and the things that we can trial and or implement or attempt to implement at various stages. That's how we're looking forward to this. But in the end, it will be this compilation of elements that compose a plan moving forward to achieve that number, that very high, that goal of 80% on an incremental basis.
And the only other thing is that they're coming back. It's the 8th through the 10th of June is when they'll be here. We've scheduled them to meet one-on-one with each alderman, with them and Jeff. At least, I don't know who else, Peter's going to be in some of them. I'm going to actually be out of town, so I won't be able to be there for that week. But they're going to have those one-on-one meetings with the aldermen to get any concerns they may have, be able to answer questions one-on-one with them. They'll also do a presentation at the agenda session on Tuesday night. Right. They're going to meet with a meeting kind of coordinated through regional planning that will also involve other mayors and the 2 solid waste districts in the area to get input from everyone, so that we're not duplicating something that someone else doesn't know about. So we're trying to bring everybody to the table to get all the input we can possibly get. But that'll be the where they go. And then, when they come back with recommendations in the end, which will probably be October, November-ish, towards the end of the year, and then it'll be a full-scale presentation at the City Council with open to the public for any questions that we can get from that point too, and go from there. But that's kind of the next 6 months, kind of what we've got planned out to provide feedback to us in increments, so that we can kind of get feedback from the public and other committees as we go along.
Can y'all give just a basic summary of kind of what their initial recommendation was? I know we have their waste audit, their operational assessment, and their baseline analysis that they've already given to us. Can you kind of give us like a brief summary of that?
Well, I mean, I don't think they've come out with any specific recommendations. The composting one, because that's about, that's close to 20%.
Food waste
Food waste and getting more involved in the compost. That's why we talked to them about this initial trial on that. The other 20% of recyclables that are going to the trash, they're going to look at alternatives to bring back to how to best retrieve that from the trash stream. They're also looking at methods to incorporate recycling out of the multifamily. I mean, we've got some trials going on where we've got containers we take there. We've got a couple where we've actually given out containers and they've got them into individual apartments. So we're pushing. Those are things we're continuing to do, what we'd already started, and keep pushing that. Ultimately, what their end recommendation is, we don't know yet. We just push them to evaluate everything and bring it back to the table. No stone unturned.
Which they've done.
The waste comp study that they did for us and the university, they're within probably a 3% standard deviation of each other. There's just not much change. There's like 16 to 18% food waste in the city. It's almost identical there, which seems, we thought it would be different because of all the athletic events and they have all their food courts and things like that on campus. It almost came back negligible differences. So, getting those other recyclables and getting some type of composting thing going on, if you could get both 20% of that gets us to 60%. Those are probably the low-hanging fruit. That is the lowest. When we get in construction and demolition, is going to be a more difficult thing to do. It takes a large area to do it, and then you've got to have the ability to deal with it once you get it. But anything, Peter, you can think
just
of different than
what
that?
they've told us is that if we could pilot some of these ideas, ahead of coming out with the final recommendations for the plan, then their recommendations will be that much stronger because we'll have
It'll
actually
feed them more
tested.
data.
We'll have actually tested some of their initial recommendations, and they can be better, better final recommendations.
Or has there been thought for a calculation for the diversion rate when you lose that tonnage for people that compost at home? Because if the education gets up and people just, instead of just letting the city compost for them, actually do their own food waste or, yard clipping, composting at home, that won't be counted towards diversion because the tonnage just isn't.
That's right, we
you know.
don't capture, yeah.
So, but that's still diverting waste.
Right.
So is there a way to calculate that, or is that any thought been put into?
Well, there's
that?
been, that has been discussed, but to actually capture or to estimate or to use some formulaically something, we don't have anything at this point.
We face similar challenges with folks that choose to use, take their aluminum cans down to get the name of the place.
Yeah, Bond.
And get money for their aluminum cans rather than put them out curbside. So, all we can do is measure what we actually collect.
Right.
But we do recognize, that it is. an
Yeah,
issue
it's
for
not
us.
so easy just to go down and bond and say how much you get because we don't know how much is coming from the
Right.
city and how much is coming
Right.
from the.
I just meant if you just,
surrounding counties.
year to year, it's like, well, we
Right.
gained 5,000 people, but our tonnage went down, by 5%. It's like, well, what's,
There may be a formula for that based on demographics, based on population, those that would compost at home. But we don't have that at this point, but it's something we can research. Yes, sir.
What are the ingredients of the composting? What goes into that?
That's yard, it's only yard waste. It's grass clippings, leaves, small brush.
Is there any, excuse me, I'm froggy.
Yes, am I.
Is there any sense in considering, since you're looking at food waste, which is going to be a pretty lively ingredient, why not consider some of that, I don't know how to say it, it's contaminated paper. Why isn't there why can't we think about a piece of paper as being similar to an oak leaf, let's say, for instance?
They did recommend that also. I mean, I think any composting and, according to how we have the ability to collect that later, but any spoiled paper that we can't run back through either as a newsprint or, office paper like this or something that is contaminated by food waste, that could go into the composting. It's just a matter of figuring out the collection system for that.
Yeah, how'd you segregate?
If your goal is diversion, and it seems like that's the mandate, it might be preferred to just stick your paper in with your food waste, and that seems like it's equal aliquots there. And
Yeah.
find a way to use it.
There's a proportion that you would have to, there's a balance you'd have to strike in there proportionately, so
Just
you,
looking
as it
at-
renders down.
Looking straight at your resources and where you're trying to arrive at this 80%. I saw 19 times 2, just, that's triple what we're doing now.
Yes.
The paper would cut down on the smell,
Yeah.
so, I mean.
Of
add
course,
more
we render
carbon.
down, the compost bags now, the paper bags that are used, those are rendered down in the process, in the
Are they?
grinding process.
Okay, I was
To
wondering.
me, that's the most obvious resource you've got in front of you.
I might comment on that real quick. We did a waste analysis at the schools, like 3 years ago, I think it was. Dennis Smith, sustainability, who used to be on this committee, the school district sustainability person, and we did it at Butterfield, and since then, they've done at least 1 or 2 more schools, but one thing that we looked at was what you're talking about. Instead of the plastic portion cups, we looked at, you can buy paper portion cups, and then, because you never get those things emptied, so they would end up in the trash if you went plastic. But with paper, if you got your ounce serving or whatever it is of applesauce, you just, it'll all go in the compost. So theoretically, that would help. But again, it takes a certain kind of, you got to have a different level of composting permit,
Right.
Instead of the yard waste, there's sanitary or organic and sanitary. But it's conceivable, and that would make it easier for the schools, for example, with the paper portion cups instead of plastic. Make it easier than trying to segregate or trying to empty.
I've got I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
No.
I've kind of got a question to follow up on. On their technical memo for their operational assessment, 427, it was page 21 of 24. They're on the residential collection section in the summary, they said that the last point was they wanted to conduct a single stream recycling pilot program to better evaluate the operational and financial implications specific to Fayetteville. That's technical document number 4, page 21 of 24.
21?
21 and 24, yeah, under residential collection. So it's talking specifically about researching single stream recycling in Fayetteville. What thought's been given to that?
Well, I mean, we did not tell them that we were not open to anything they could bring forward. So, I mean, it's something we're willing to evaluate. If we do some type of pilot like that, we've got a company on the south end of town right across the street from us, in essence, that I believe will have some interest in maybe working on a pilot with us for that. It's strictly to get information so that we can make a better informed decision upon if that is the recommendation brought back. It's not necessarily, it's not a direction we've led them in, it's a direction they've said if we want to get to 80%, we would be probably the leading recycler in the country, because they question whether anybody is really higher than 80%. It would put us right up there as the first line, top 5 recycling cities in the country. So they believe that's something they need more information on. So it's something we're evaluating as an opportunity to gather more information just to present that. It's doesn't mean we'll go that way, but it's any more data we're armed with is ability to make a more informed decision in the future.
I think the things we've heard about single stream from them so far have been, your participation will go way up with a switch to single stream. So that ideally, the pilot will tell us more about, well, is that a reality for Fayetteville, and will our participation really go up? And we've also heard lots of questions about contamination and what will a single stream switch do to our contamination rates. So it'll allow us to evaluate that as well.
That's what I wanted to ask about, Jeff. We had talked a little bit about a month ago. In this discussion, we kind of knew that single stream was going to probably be part of the discussion, because Kessler's been writing single stream contracts for MRFs all over the country for 15 years. So in looking at that, I asked y'all to get with Kessler and look specifically at contamination, because contamination rates in single-stream recycling have been reported as high as 25%, some higher.
Right.
You know, what have they
Well, that's-
reported back at?
Well, that's been part of an ongoing discussion, and will continue to be. Again, we're only about halfway through this process. And they've talked about the variables in that and those contamination rates and how they vary across the country and in different markets and based on different demographics. So that'll be a continuing discussion. Going back to this pilot question for us specifically, the advantage for us in an effort in that area, we could be, very selectively choose a route or an area, and then we don't have, our advantage is we don't have to depart. We've got the equipment, we've got the trucks. It's simply a matter of carts and or trucks dedicated to, if it were a single stream pilot, to pilot that. But yeah, to quantify and talk about, when you're talking about contamination rates, it varies greatly.
Well,
You may be able to speak to that a little bit too.
It's that too, but we've made
It's
it
volume.
perfectly clear to them that we're not interested in having a single stream operation as a 25%
Right.
contamination rate.
Right.
We pretty much got a very good system like we have now where we have little contamination. And if we switch to something else, then we want the best system available. We want it at what would be considered the lowest contamination rate possible if we were to go that route. I'm thinking 10% or less are, we're committed to not wasting anything we don't have to. If we're going to get the 80%, we can't be at 75% of it and get the 80%.
So just a quick follow-up on that. So we kind of touched on it just for a second, but so in establishing what we would and wouldn't accept, how do we establish those metrics, and what are those metrics?
Well, I don't,
determining that as far as the
we're not limited them in any way. They can come back to whatever. We're telling them that we don't feel like our public will support a system that has 25% waste. So we're giving them information on what we perceive as that. We're not telling them what to bring back or what not to bring back. So we're not developing the metrics for them. We're going to let them develop it and present it to us. But we're trying to lead them as we go in the direction that we're above most cities that recycle, and we're not going to accept the mediocrity side of it, that we're going to want the best thing you can come back with that has the minimal waste while providing the greatest recycling at the same time.
And they know what those markets, will bear and what those commodities will command based on any given contamination rate. So there's a threshold past which they wouldn't go.
So does that pilot lead to, is that just for research purposes, or, where would that lead? Does that lead, does the state's overall waste plan now include a MRF, or does the state's waste plan not include that now? Where does that lead?
For us, we don't have anything in saying we want you to go develop this with the idea that we're going to build a MRF or have a MRF. If that's the way they come back and say that's the only way you can get the 80%, then they're going to present that to the council. And if you decide that the 80% is the most important thing there is out there to get to that level of recycling, and that's the only way you can do it, then that's a decision you and the other 7 members of the council will make. But we're just saying, bring us the information in the most detailed manner possible so that y'all can make the most informed decision. The recycling trial is to gather them more information. So say we took 300 households and asked them to do a recycling program with us, and we worked and sorted that down at the facility next to us. It'd have to be a manageable size, but large enough to be accurate data if we were to extrapolate it out across the rest of the city. So 300 is, we've got a lot of accounts. That's going to be a small percentage, but if 5% is that number, then that's what we would set it up, that they need to give us some type of quantifiable information.
I just had one. Am I next?
Go ahead.
Just a little clarification on semantics. Diversion rate, that's the mandate, right? Recycling is diversion, correct? So, my grand plan that I just dreamed up sitting here looking at your presentation, where I combine all of the compostables, commercial, residential, the residential, commercial paper, let's say by some strange quirk of the imagination that would work. Is that recycling or diversion?
That's a component of
That's-
diversion.
yeah.
Recycling is a type
The
of
other.
diversion. Right now, we count material that we compost and recycle together as part of our diversion rate.
Diversion.
You get that.
Diversion
We're
is
already
about-
diverting something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So keeping it out of the landfill is
yeah, not
considering
going to the
diverting
Diversion.
it.
You're diverting it, yeah.
So, to me, I'm struggling with the contamination problem, because I think the contamination question is about recycling, right? It's about pure metals, that sort of thing, pure paper, pure product to recycle, correct?
And it all overlaps, but yeah, that's part of it.
A commodity that's able to be recycled is not contaminated.
Okay, so, but a big warehouse full of wet cardboard is contaminated.
Well, they can
By
still,
that definition.
I mean, they can still recycle. I mean,
Well, that's true, wet cardboard, but I guess I'm not seeing enough credence given to the idea that a material could be contaminated but could still be used in some kind of diversion.
No, and
That's my point.
well,
I understand.
I think, even like, if
Like
you
if it's
talk,
contaminated with food waste
right,
and it's
that's,
being diverted, we're heading toward our goal, 80% diversion. So recycling is kind of, to me, it's kind of a pure golden goal that maybe that's not what we're really working on here. We're after diversion.
Well, the goal really shouldn't be to need to divert. The goal should be to not have as much to recycle.
Yeah.
In the
Well,
beginning, but
yes,
you know,
hence the reduction, the plan name reduction,
yeah.
that first
Can't get
component
any
being
credit on
reduction.
that, on your diversion mandate, can you?
Well,
They
that's
don't
kind of
really
like
have a-
composting in your backyard. We don't really have a good way to measure that. But
Yeah,
if you
nobody's-
don't generate it in the first place, that's even better.
Nobody's going to get any credit for that. All you get credit for is a percentage of your hauled weight, material that you haul it.
That we quantify, that we weigh, that we measure. right.
Yeah.
So,
well, and to clarify, I think there's a little confusion. I don't think the council said to the administration, you will be at 80% by this year. I think it was more of how can we research this and set it as a goal. So not really a mandate of 80%, but
Yeah.
please explore this.
Yeah, it was a goal set.
Goal
They
set.
set a
A goal set,
lofty
yeah.
goal, because,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember
Can we reset?
the meeting,
Yeah.
and Matthew saying, well, if we don't set it high, it'll be hard to get it up there. So let's set it high and go out and evaluate what
Yeah.
is available.
yeah, you find out if it's doable.
Yeah, and that's why we hired Kessler
And
to.
But if we only get to
provide that
70%, that would still be,
Oh,
that'd be
we-
incredible.
We
I
should,
mean,
we should
yeah.
throw a citywide party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should definitely shoot for that.
To get to
Well,
that.
can I jump?
Yeah, please go
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I went to the public meeting in early April, and they talked about pros and cons of single stream, even in that, context early on, so I know there's public record of some of that discussion. And then I was able to participate in one of the stakeholder meetings, solid waste folks and recycling folks. And, what I think, some of their early conclusions are to get to 80%, it's gonna take everything, because 20% is what in their waste study is waste or non-recyclable. And so it's not just about MRFs and it's not just about C&D, not just about organics, it's about everything. And so I think what they're gonna do is come back with recommendations, and then it's gonna be a matter of them or the city council determining, okay, where's our money best spent to start chiseling away at this? Because you're not gonna get the 80 soon, that's a big goal, and it's gonna take everything operating at 100% efficiency just to get to 80. And so it's a big deal, but yeah, it's the reason they had the stakeholder meetings with people like WM and the Regional Planning Commission, because it's, I think, some of these are bigger than Fayetteville, as far as you need certain volumes to make things feasible. And so that's, the pilot studies will help determine, at what level could Fayetteville do something by themselves versus what's it going to take to make it more cost effective. And so that's why I think they're bringing in other mayors and other, the county, the solid waste districts. And it's a big challenge, and there's a lot of moving parts.
I mean, we just asked them to, bring forth everything. And
Right.
this is an example of nothing we would do. I don't believe there's a chance in the world we'd ever do this, but essentially they were talking about Montgomery, Alabama.
Right.
And that,
It's all in one.
that
Yeah.
their mayor was elected and they had 2% diversion. And he goes, I want to improve that. They ended up putting in a $35 million, they dump everything in the trash and they sort it all. It's nothing we want, but it shows that they went from diverting 2% to 50% upon completion of their plant and getting it up and running. They probably can't go any higher because they're
Right.
throwing everything away, but they
Right. That's
got
as high
that
as they'll-
point right off the
Mixed-
bat.
That's as high as
Which
they'll
is
probably ever
total
get.
mixed waste,
Yeah.
recycling, everything. We're
Yeah.
It's,
I
we
think
said,
that-
tell us about,
I think they've already ruled that
everything, but that doesn't mean
Yeah.
we're gonna do everything.
Right.
But it says,
Because doing that would be a little deceptive, as we all know,
Well-
when it comes out in your numbers, because even though you might put it all in one bin, it's not being recycled.
Well, no,
It's not
and I
diverting
think
it, but.
that's why
well,
they
and it's
looked at
very
it, but they ruled
difficult,
it
because
out.
there you've really got, they're putting food waste, everything in
Yeah.
there, and you're getting
Dirty diapers, all
everything.
nine
they're
yards.
not excluding anything.
But, yeah, the highest they'll ever get's like 50%. So I think they've looked at that and they've already
Yeah.
determined, well,
Yeah.
that's not gonna be
But
feasible.
we
right
said,
now.
we want to hear everything there is out there that you've ever ran across, so that we can
Right.
present it to the council, so they know what the bottom of it is and what's the top is, and then we can make choices based on cost and what we can afford to do and what we feel like we can get the participant in the city to do. So,
During their baseline analysis, and I know, Fran, you were here when Fayetteville went through the incineration debate. During their baseline analysis and looking at the last 15 years of what Fayetteville has tried, what did they come up with in that?
We pretty much told them from the get-go that incineration was not something we were
that's
interested in.
the one
looking at.
thing we took off the
That
table.
was
and
never
I
everyone-
mean, we
the table.
talked about
Don't talk
mixed
about
bags,
that.
and we talked. They looked into our mixed bags where Fayetteville used to have the blue bag and put
Oh.
everything in it. And can you talk a little bit about what they looked at in their baseline analysis?
Well,
You talking about the history of what the
Yeah.
recycling program has done in the past?
No,
We-
in the
we-
Kessler's baseline analysis that they submitted.
Yeah, I think the baseline analysis primarily
Where we're
focused
at
on
now.
currently how
what are we doing
program
now?
is operating right now.
How is that about?
I suppose there's a little bit in there on
Yes, they did
the
the
history
A
of what
little
the
bit of
recycling.
history,
Yeah,
There's
for where the
some-
program
They
came
may
from.
mention that for that, but I mean, we told them, don't look back, look forward, with the exception of no incineration.
Yeah, that was never on the
That-
table.
I was here when that went on.
Yeah.
So.
I wasn't.
Yes.
So-
You weren't even born.
Oh, I was born, but I wasn't here. I wasn't in Fayetteville.
But I mean, other than that, we didn't say look back history. We said look forward, tell us what's been developed, present ideas for going forward, and we'll go from there. With the exception, and we did tell them we were not interested in any type of incineration type process.
Aubrey,
Oh, no, Aubrey, you were next. Go ahead.
whoever wants to.
Well, okay.
Okay.
Before I forget, I'll forget, you'll still remember me.
I don't know.
Something we did talk about a couple of years ago, I imagine, was that one problem with food waste is that a lot of it's going down one of those machines in their incinerators.
Oh,
So we don't have any knowledge of how much is going into our
No.
sewage stream and going into the lake and having to be cleaned out potentially later. And a lot of cities that are more progressive than we are, for some reason, outlaw those things. restaurants, homes, apartment buildings especially. I think I lived in one place that had one of those things years ago. And
Garbage disposal, yes.
I just wouldn't consider doing it. I mean, so much of the food waste can go in the backyard. You can watch the crows and robins pick it up and eat it, you know, or the fox comes by later, and, you know, so it's not deadly, terrible stuff that has to go underground or down and be ground up in the incinerator. But I know just within the last year, when this subject came up, I had suggested at the senior center that we stop using that thing and put it out for composting at the little garden, city subsidized garden at the senior center. And, well, that was a great idea, but they didn't have an employee to dedicate to hauling it out over there and putting it in a bin to compost. And the park department didn't have anybody else to put on that job. So I had to admit I was too old to be in charge of that. So nothing happened. But it is, I see all this food, and I don't even know why people accept it on their plate. If they know they're not going to eat this food and that food, all you got to do is tell the servers, don't give me that. You know, I do that. You know, if there's something I really can't eat, like corn. But anyhow, it does finally, I guess what I should say before I stop this, is it comes down to, at some point, you have to have ways to incentivize. It's the first time I ever said that word. It's been popular now for about 5 years, and I finally used it. We need to provide incentives, and we need to find restrictions. It's somewhat similar to yard waste that's being burned by people who don't care about pollution of the air, don't care if they happen to send flames into somebody else's yard. And I go around the neighborhood and check where I'm smelling smoke for those. Every time I smell smoke coming around.
At this stage, to go to your, at this stage, it's about education, and it's difficult to impart stewardship, just like it is to impart wisdom, but stewardship and education, and we're starting with that incentivize, you know, efforts to incentivize and educate first. That's a challenge.
Anything we end up rolling out on this, if we were to roll out a food composting, you know, and have a food composting bin, it's going to have a huge education factor associated with it. And then, you know, his question is, by providing that, do we make it easy enough that they're not going to run it down their sink? So we know there's 16 to 18% of that is going in because we literally picked it out of the trash. On average, the university's doing the same amount. So is there really 30%? We don't know that, you know. And if we make it easy enough for them to dump it in that, will they, you know, can we incentivize that and educate them to do that and get some of that to not go down the garbage disposal?
And I hope that education continues to build. It's like, because I know a lot of the education that's been done, the city contracted for some last year. A lot of that education was more of just small events, you know, where they, in my opinion, go to visit with small children, but then they go to a different school or may do it somewhere else, but they're more of events instead of real education, ongoing education. I think for like potty training a dog, you have to do it once, like every day for months, or once a week every day for months, or they don't learn anything. They might, you know, do the right thing once or twice, but true education's ongoing, and I hope that we incorporate that in the plan.
And we will.
You know, there was an elected officials luncheon. Aubrey, did you get to go to that elected officials luncheon? I asked Aubrey to go.
canceled it.
Yeah, they canceled it from
Did they
lack of
cancel it?
interest, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, I was out of town for a wedding and I couldn't go.
Yeah, I drove out there. I thought the day,
They didn't tell me it was
week
canceled.
before.
I signed up and they
Canceled.
told me it was canceled.
Next week also.
I was just hoping to have someone there that could let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you for trying to go.
Have enjoyed it.
Connie?
You spoke of events, and I was going to ask this because this was something that I wanted to talk about right when you all started the process, recycling at events like Block Street. And is that part of this also?
Yeah, I think it would be, and I listened to a lady talk that was out of California that she was working, she was zero waste, but they were working with like Ohio State University to try and do it at their football stadiums when they have, 104,000 people there. And they said the biggest thing they learned is, not everything they were using is recyclable, like whether it's the paper that goes, and not only were they just trying to recycle, they were trying to get, don't wrap the hot dog up in a piece of paper and then stick it in one of those little paper trays also. So they were trying to educate, don't get it there to begin with. Use things that could go in with the food waste that was going to be something that would be more like our paper sacks that we pick up yard waste in, and we could just grind it up and it would just become part of that food waste or compost chain also. But they were doing that. I mean, we recycle, like with the football, they do that. One of the biggest things we saw on dealing with the university and trying to get them on board is you're dealing with food service. You're dealing with facility maintenance of every education building. You're dealing with athletics and any sporting event. There's a couple more. There was there's 5 different groups that run their own thing at the university. I mean, sports, they do their own thing because they're out to making money. But the facilities that are the janitors emptying the trash, you can't believe the amount of food waste that comes out of that because people take their lunch and then throw their apple cores and their extra food away in the trash that they're picking up, even in the classrooms. But anyway, you've got a lot of different things like that going on. But yes, events is a big thing, but bikes, blues, and barbecue.
Yes.
It's
Dealing with, it's hard for us to compete with that because usually what's going on, Waste Management does it for advertising and provides it where we don't try and make money, but we don't try and lose money. But they'll provide it for free or some situation like that where unless we mandate that we're going to provide that and we're the only one going to do it, then we can control it. Residential trash, we control our own market, but we don't have that in every case. So events are tougher in that regard.
Well, and then in the process of, you've got to have somebody to empty out those recycle bags and do that. So there's a process, but it seems to me that the city could come up with, for any event, no matter who does it, that there could be a process to recycling in each event. That's part of what that event is responsible for.
Right. And there's a very simple, right now, there's a very simple component to that, much like this most recent event, the Block Street Block Party. We provide recycling stands, and of course, we're not capturing everything we would like to capture, but there are limitations to what we can capture and what we can collect, So
you did work with Block Street on that, because I did it the first year and second year, and they were having trouble getting those things read. It was.
We actually went in. Typically, the vendors, if you will, or the business owners, we provide them with the stands, and typically they will bring them. They'll bring them the bag materials and stands back to us. There was a group. As a matter of fact, today that didn't have the means to transport all of that. So they called us and we sent our people up and collected it and brought it back.
And a one-day event's easier to control. Get in something where you got a 5-day event with bikes, blues, and barbecue, and they put that beer garden down there, and you can't get in there to get, because there's so many people. I mean, so many streets are closed, we can't even hardly access to get them out of there.
Well, let's
you want to
Bikes,
do
Blues,
that.
and Barbecue is one solid waste event. I mean, there's trash everywhere.
Well,
that was difficult,
but that's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
Oh, it's epic.
But I think, that goes back to what he said about, it's an all-inclusive thing. We're not going to get anywhere near that 80% unless we grab every 1%, quarter percent, 0.5%, because there may be 12 halves that equal 5%. And and we're telling them, bring it all back on the table, and then it just becomes a matter of, is it cost effective to get that last 5%, you know? Is 65 all we can afford, or is it 75, 77, 82? You know, it's just a matter of what can we get and how can we get it and can we afford to do it.
And I
But
think-
yeah, everything is on the table, from events to a block party on one block in eight house neighborhood.
And I think in those, oh, go ahead.
Well, sometimes those events too, the city needs to have in some way, and I guess this would go to the council, of saying to a person who wants to apply for an event that you're responsible for recycling and these are the following things that need to be done. I'm not sure how you go about that, but.
We
part of-
have it as part of our event permit process right now. If you remember last year, we worked with the Environmental Action Committee to revamp
Right.
that form.
Right.
So now all
But there's
event
no- is there-
applicants,
Oh, go ahead.
all event applicants receive the information and are directed to the Recycling and Trash Division
Right.
for event recycling, connected to Jeff's folks for the
Are
resources.
they, is it mandatory?
It's not mandatory
Yeah,
now.
that's- yeah.
That's the
part.
difference.
It's-
I mean, we suggest it wholeheartedly
Yeah, that's
and
what I
try and
thought.
educate that on every opportunity possible. But, I mean, it may be that the council, it's just how much do they want to bite off on mandating this? You know, do we mandate multifamily recycling? You know, you're required to do it. You know, it's a convenience thing because we'll put those multiple types of recycling bins out in there, you know, and you're gonna get, they don't have space for them. They take up space where their cars are. They've got a limited number of, you know, they need every space they got. They don't have something built into that if it's old. Anything new, we're trying to get them to build that into it as they build it. You're getting into these like Sterling Frisco and some of these though where they have to roll it out to us to get it because it's chutes inside the building and things like that. But they're coming around to being more open to doing that. You know, but that's something
And
only the
that's a
council
new-
can mandate.
yeah.
I can't tell them you're
Right,
going
right.
to
So
do it.
I'm saying that for the benefit of the council too, as far as that goes.
I'll just add from event perspective, I worked at the Fayetteville Foam Fest and managed the recycling as part of Foam Fest, and I'm proud to say that we recycled 1,600 pounds of glass and cardboard and only threw away 480 pounds of trash as part of that event, so.
So it
recycling
can
rate,
be done.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
really, really high.
It can.
But managing the contamination was a huge, challenge for us, the whole event. Like, we had to be on it 24/7 the whole time, because you turn around and all of a sudden there's aluminum in your glass, or there's cardboard in your glass, or there's trash in your aluminum, or whatever.
Yeah.
And, event contamination issues are significant when it comes to managing recycling at events, for sure.
It's,
No, it is.
it's
You're right.
interesting that you said that because one of the costs associated with whether it be single stream or whatever it is, whatever type of stream you have going for your recycling, policing the actual bin, looking into the bin is something that municipalities just can't afford to do. I mean, it's not possible. So when you talk about that in terms of an event where you already have people on staff to do that, it's more feasible. But when you look at it on a residential, from a residential perspective, that policing is just, it's not feasible, and that's when contamination goes up.
That's where education can pay benefits for you.
Yeah.
At an event, you don't have as much ability to do the education because you get people from out of
Yeah, 'cause
town and they don't know your recycling program. But with an educated public, what we've seen is you have a better ability to infiltrate the masses.
And there's no doubt that the education is going to be a whole lot easier in the residential, even if we were to switch from the current one we have now. 57% that are recycling and used to separating, even though it's going in the same bin, they're not going to throw up food waste in there because they've already, they're used to doing it. Now, is it going to contaminate the glass with the cardboard? Yes. Is that going to reduce our commodity prices? Some, possibly. But if you're getting 3 times the commodities going in there, does that offset it? And does 3 times going in there, and we get the other 20% of that, and we double from 20 to 40% diversion, then we're also not paying $35 a ton for every ton going to the landfill also. So there's offsettings on that and savings as well, because a dollar saved is just as good as the dollar earned.
If you can habituate people to, I'm sorry. go
No,
ahead.
you go ahead.
Much like many of our neighborhoods and the recycling, that process and setting out those bins, they've become so habituated that they'll even actually segregate in the bin. And of course that facilitates for the driver, the operator. They love that. So if you can educate to that degree, then certainly there's the possibility, the hope that you can educate then, if in some different form of recycling.
And building on that, what's crazy is they can go and tell you some neighborhoods in town, say, and I don't know this one, but say you're going to Washington Willow neighborhood, and they've started doing that. Everybody does it.
Everybody does the
I
same
think it's
thing.
almost like you get out and walk your neighborhood street and you're embarrassed to put yours out unsegregated. Because they'll roll into a neighborhood that has 200 homes in it, and 198 of them will be sorted
Yeah, all
from
lumped.
paper
Right.
to cardboard to glass on across the bin.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And they know the drivers know which of those, and those are the guys that are done, and then they're off helping the ones that don't segregate it. But I mean, it's an amazing thing to see.
Garnet, you had your hand.
Well, I was just going to comment on events, and this is probably more than we would ever want to get into, but and not to plug, but Waste Management does the Waste Management Phoenix Open pro golf tournament every year, which is like some gigantic spectacle. They've got grandstands and vendors, and it's just huge. Apparently, I'm not a golfer, so I don't. But apparently, it's like the biggest event on the whole circuit, and it's a zero waste event. But it is the most expensive thing you can imagine. Because Waste Management's sponsoring it and they want it to be zero, so they're going all in. And yeah, they start a year in advance with all the vendors about, don't use foil wrappers on your hot dogs, or, telling them what you can bring in, what you can't. If you bring in pallets, you got to, make sure the pallets can be recycled and, everything. But I mean, it's, oh my gosh, yeah, they've got a whole staff that works on that all year long. And then when it gets down to the actual event, literally hundreds, I forget how many people show up, but, there's like 500,000 people there or something. It's crazy. But yeah, they got hundreds and hundreds of recycling bins, and they've got people by all of them. Volunteers, hundreds of volunteers.
Volunteers.
Literally, policing and educating at the bins. I mean, that's what it takes, which is, you can't really do that, but they do that because it's their thing, and it's their one big event of the year. But, normally you couldn't do that. But that's what it takes to get to 100% at a big event like that. It's just above and beyond, and so it's not normal to be able to do 100% or even a high percentage at an event. So that's don't count on a high percentage. It's a challenge at an event. It's tough.
Jeff, if I could ask you one other question, because I've read two amazing articles in the last 2 weeks, one from April 23rd and one from that someone sent the committee today, so I forwarded it out because I just wanted everybody to get it. I think Peter sent it to everyone from Sonia about glass. I was just curious as to what percentage of our waste stream is glass right now in our recycling.
What percentage of our waste stream?
Does that say here?
I mentioned
I'd have to look.
It's on the city website.
a meeting
Yeah.
before that. I didn't bring internet with me, so.
Yeah, and I don't have that with me, but
I mentioned at our last meeting, I'd like to start talking about recycling for at least 10 minutes out of every meeting, because I think the Environmental Action Committee should be involved. We've gone a little over 10 minutes this time.
well, I will say this with respect to glass, we're continuing to work to expand our glass program and collect glass, not only along Dixon Street.
Well, I know.
but even
I can tell you, Alan,
We've
that
gone to Dixon Street, and that's been a big
Absolutely.
collection.
Yeah.
So we're 4.5 to 6 tons. It varies.
Well,
But now we've worked our way up the Central College corridor to those, we've petitioned, solicited businesses there, and even further north up to the area south of the mall, and you've got all those restaurants and various clubs. So we're trying to expand that glass recycling program.
This says our composition of commercial waste is 5.4% glass containers, and residential is 3.5.
No,
That-
when I- when-
That's glass going to the landfill.
Yeah, this is what's going to landfill that we're not taking out. I mean, just like our glass recycling program we started on Dixon, which expanded it out a little bit further from that now. But we went down there, the first week we collected it, we collected a quarter ton of glass. A year later, we're collecting 4 ton, I mean, that's per week, a quarter ton per week. A year later, we're collecting 4 ton per week.
And it's up from that.
And it's even higher than that now. But we were getting that just off the 50 or so bars that we were having, and not every one of them was participating.
To Fayetteville's credit, I don't think anybody else in this part of the state's doing that at all.
Well, it's just interesting, and I brought up those articles. I hope everyone gets a chance to read that as we just continue to educate the committee on glass, because this one from the Wall Street Journal from April 23rd, it calls Big Cracks Spread in Glass Recycling. Strategic Materials is the largest, I guess, regional processing company in the United States, but two of the quotes in here says, when you're losing money and time processing glass for not much revenue, it is just a losing battle and you're not sustainable. And then the chief financial officer of Waste Management was talking about glass, and he said glass has always been a difficult commodity to recycle and an economic challenge. And then he went on to say glass is tough to handle, hard on equipment, and the only recyclable commodity it has to pay a processor to take. Yeah. And they're starting to charge between $10 to $40 a ton to accept some truckloads of used glass because of the high contamination rate. So, and the last quote that I thought was interesting, and it's from their sustainability officer. He said that glass has become the scourge of recycling. You just can't make money from it. And that's just something I just find shocking, because when I grew up learning how to recycle, before I knew that the point was to change the minds of consumers and the people producing, I always thought glass was the bread and butter.
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah,
in our
there was
advantage,
5 cents a bottle.
Right.
When we grew up. And went
Such a
to
high
college.
volume, you think that.
the
You're paying
advantage,
5 cents on
Still
for the bottle and 20 cents for the Coke.
use it.
It's also by color too, like
Yes.
isn't brown the
The
easiest?
the advantage that we have with Ripple Glass, although we don't receive anything for it, although we do receive some in-kind from installation project that goes back to Habitat for Humanity. Ripple takes all of our glass, and the brown, I think it's New Belgium that processes all that, and then everything else goes.
Love New Belgium.
Is it New
That's
Belgium?
Newcastle.
Yeah, it's
I
one.
know. I thought it was Boulevard.
Yeah, Boulevard.
Is it Boulevard?
Some of it goes, 'cause
Yeah.
they brew in Kansas City.
Yeah.
which is where
So,
we-
and then Owens Corning then
Get some of it.
produces insulation from the other glass
They'll
material.
take that. They literally told us, I mean, the brown glass, they're sending it up, they're separating it, you can blow it out by color.
Mhm.
They put all the
Optically
brown
sort
and
it.
send it to a plant in Oklahoma that makes their bottles.
Yep.
They melt it down, remake the bottles, and said potentially you could drink it at Jose's, throw it in our recycling bin, they pick it up, haul it to Kansas City, sort it, send it to Oklahoma, and come back, and potentially 30 days later, you'd be drinking out a piece of the same bottle in Jose's again. So, I mean, what we've got going with them is they'll take it, they come get it, we have no disposal costs whatsoever. Whether or not how long that will continue, we
Yeah,
don't
that
know.
we don't know.
At some point, if we reach that level where it's costing us money, then I don't see us doing it. But the reason we're so interested in pursuing it is it's the heaviest commodity in the waste stream. So if we're gonna get back the $35 a ton by not sending it to the landfill, it takes very little of that to make a ton. I mean,
So you don't think
you
we
take
would
a
collect it?
4-yard dumpster and it may weigh a ton and a half.
So you don't think we would collect it if it cost money?
Huh?
You don't think we would collect it if it
I
cost money?
don't, well, I mean, if it gets inefficient, I don't see how we you know, we can't
Some-
lose a lot of money.
If it wasn't for Ripple and you had to
Yeah.
pay to ship it somewhere, then it'd be a
You know,
tough deal.
our deal is we have someone that wants it close enough to us that they want to come get it, and they'll do it for no cost.
They send
So,
it.
so where we're making money on glass is we're saving $35 a ton,
Going
for
across
every
the
one of them
transfer.
not going to the landfill.
I might make one quick comment too, that when we say there's no cost to the city, there's still a cost because they're still handling it and stuff. So even, I always like to make that plug that, recycling is never free. There's always the cost at least to pick it
Yeah.
up,
There's an
but at least we're not paying money out of pocket to.
We're
landfill
getting
or
it as
somewhere.
we're going and getting
Yeah.
everything else too, so.
Yeah.
There's
I
an
mean,
associated
there's
cost.
something,
with
but
everything.
it's
There's always
essentially,
a
it's not
cost.
$40 a ton we're having to pay somebody to come get it.
Right.
And we are getting, getting a couple of truckloads of Owens Corning
Right.
Pink Panther insulation to give the Habitat for
And
Humanity.
I was just curious when you said that, because I started taking continuing education courses and being on conference calls about recycling after, as soon as I was elected, before I was actually an alderman, when we got our tour of the solid waste pickup and we saw the 3 through 7 large bin of collected plastic and stuff, materials that have been sitting there for months, and we couldn't do anything with it as a city because we didn't have 2 markets to sell it to when we collected it. So that's when I started getting really heavily into recycling and learning about it, because it's a commodity, it's just an economy.
Yep.
There was a time, some decades back, I'm so old I can't remember how many decades ago, glass was of interest to the construction business. They were using it for road metal.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, if you're already sensitized about glass because it's heavy per volume, there might be other ways.
Yeah, we've even looked at that thinking, could we crush it and use it under sidewalks? It's just not the best material for us to put here to get the substructure for the sidewalks. But I mean, we've considered that. If we manufactured our own concrete and we could mix it in and use it for sand and concrete, then, that'd be something potentially. But, we've looked at that issue and thought, how can we reuse this? I mean, that's just like, we've been storing all our curb and gutter and sidewalk we pulled out. I'm getting ready to crush it. So that'll be that much B-stone and SB2 I don't have to buy. I hope to generate 50 tons or 100 tons of that out of what we've saved over the last few years. So, I mean, we're looking at any and all ways on anything possible and anything they can come up with that we might not have ever thought about.
Well, I appreciate y'all giving such a detailed discussion. For anyone that's interested, all the documents that they have there, Peter shared with me. I'm happy to share them with anyone in the community.
We're gonna actually working on getting those up on the website
Yeah,
here
yeah.
in the next week or so they'll be available on the city's
And-
new website.
And so, about our discussion on recycling, I would like for us to talk about it at every meeting, not necessarily a discussion like this, but maybe cover a small aspect of recycling, because the Environmental Action Committee hasn't been extremely involved in that in the past years, and I think that that's one of the major costs and markets that our committee could be involved in to help save the city some money. Just to kind of close down that topic, does everyone know the difference between a MRF and a dirty MRF when we talk about recycling as compared to curbside sort?
I do not.
Okay. I didn't either, but I learned the difference.
Yeah. What we have is a MRF, Materials Recovery Facility, which we're source separating. That material is being source separated, and it comes in segregated on these trucks, and then it is actually dumped into various bins, and then it's, as a single material, goes onto a baler belt and is baled as that relative. There's very little contamination there, some.
You're talking about at the recycle center. I mean,
Yeah.
I've
Yes.
been to,
Yeah.
I've
So
been
it's
to
already
the center.
segregated.
But
So
I-
that's just called,
That's source separated.
Yes, that's
MRF?
that's a
But that's-
materials recovery facility, but
Okay.
a dirty MRF.
Well, there's
There's a lot of
single-stream
different kinds.
MRF
So-
and
so
just a
MRF is
dirty.
Yes.
So there's two.
Yes.
MRF, Material Recovery
MRF,
Facility.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, now there's, the
That's-
other old school MRF where stuff's mixed, which I guess everything kind of, I wouldn't call it single stream, but like the old school where, and I don't mean any criticism, but like In Rogers, there's one where everything gets dumped and then you manually have to separate.
Right.
You know, so it takes a lot more labor and you get more contamination.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
And then single stream or modern single stream, you can ramp up the technology and you have optical sorters and
Magnet.
air jets
Eddy
that separate
currents.
stuff, and you've got magnets, and you've got eddy currents for aluminum. But it gets more efficient to handle larger volumes, but it costs more. So you need larger volumes to.
But I mean, it's so
Yeah.
sensitive. I mean, you can run a 3-7 plastic along with that Coke bottle up through there, and it will know to blow off one and leave the other.
Yeah, the pneumatic
And
purge
it's
will
quite
blast it.
something to see. And your magnet gets your cans. They can blow like they do at Ripple. They can crush. They dump all those glass bottles, green, clear, brown, on a conveyor. It crushes it, and it can tell which color that glass is, and that boost of air pressure will shoot all the brown off as it goes by into that bin, and it'll go a little further and it'll shoot all the green off, and maybe the clear runs up and just falls into a third one. But I mean, there's some
Glass-
unbelievable technology out there. Now, each one of those things, to do that, may be $2 million.
It's costly.
Or 200, depending on the size of the facility.
Well, I mean, to get a minimum MRF with all those different things in there is probably going to be $30 million.
But
And they
to
still
get a
require
small-
some human.
Right.
Yes.
And you're
Right.
still
Humans.
looking at,
There's still, there are humans there.
but the more of those you have, the fewer humans you have there, and the fewer that are exposed to the
But
trash.
technology is responding to that need, and I've seen that at the various expos, and it's more and more sophisticated all the time. Again, it is costly, but
And that was
We
one
are
of the
responding.
kind of things that we talked about in depth with Kessler. They're familiar, the Little Rock has a single stream MRF now, and they've got a year or two under their belt. But yeah, it still takes people on the front end because people throw their old garbage disposals and their patio furniture in there. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how that works, but all sorts of crazy stuff that you have to manually sort out.
So a dirty MRF?
Like the.
No, that's not. No, okay, now dirty.
No, you didn't tell me
Okay,
dirty.
sorry. Now dirty is Montgomery, Alabama, and that's where they just throw trash.
Throw it all
it's
in.
mixed waste.
Dirty diapers.
Completely mixed
food.
waste
Mixed waste
process.
facility.
It's messy.
And in both of those, if something gets missed, like a garden hose, they don't
Right.
know about it until it shuts their line down.
Yeah, it gets tangled up.
Yeah. But, Fran, you've had your hand up for a while, and I wanted to let you
Well,
ask your question.
just wanted to point out about 3 different things for the committee to take note of. You brought it up, Alan, about the measurement of the percentage of contamination. You need to define when something's actually been recycled. Is it when it's picked up and it goes away? Or is it when it's actually put back into the system?
So when is it diverted, or
No,
when is it
when is it
recycled?
recycled?
Yeah.
It's diverted when it's picked up and it's not your problem anymore.
Mhm.
It's diverted from the public. It's diverted from the landfill when you're not having to pay for the landfill tipping fee. But when is it actually recycled? And that percentage, we're talking about 9% participation and 11% compost. Is that what it is up there?
They're by weight, not by participation.
Right, but the definition of when something's recycled needs to be topmost in your mind, because that's when you start deciding about single stream and contamination percentage, and whether or not your program is truly recycling, or is it just picking up. The other thing is, we've talked about education since the cows came home 30 years ago with incineration, and we still do not have a full-time city educator who devotes all of their time to that one solid waste purpose that I know of. Is that
No,
correct,
that's
Jim?
correct. We share.
And, well, it's not a good sharing.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunate. It's.
And I don't see any
Yeah.
reason for waiting until all the plans and we need somebody all the time now, and we've needed them for 30 years. But the main thing I wanted to say to the committee is, really, there's the mechanics of recycling, the how-to, the MRFs, the pickup, this study, all of this is focused on what are we gonna do with this stuff. I think that the city and the citizens have to decide who are we and who's responsible for this stuff. Do we want, is our goal to be responsible for our own waste? I mean, I don't have anybody come to my house and flush my toilet. You know, I don't have anybody come to my house and show me where to put things in the bin. That's my responsibility. And resource recovery. We seem to have lost that, and we're taking up our time and our efforts with, what are we gonna do with all this stuff? Because we have mountains and mountains and mountains. But we have those mountains because we don't have that responsibility, and we don't have a value for the resources that we are wasting if we don't do this. And that's what I'd like to think an educator, if they could, is make the value of our actions personal and make them actually the major part of the program. Because we're going to have things continue to be created that are not recyclable until we have laws in this country, like there are in San Francisco, that say you can't bring that in here. You cannot have those plastic bags. You cannot have something in a container from a fast food shop that is not compostable. I've been to the airport in San Francisco. There are 2 slots, glass, compost. Every paper item that they serve any fast food on or any food on in that airport goes in that compost bin. There are 2 holes. There's not simple, I don't know what is. So I've been at this for 40 odd years, and it's the contamination that is the most frightening thing, because I've seen it screw up more programs, and everything you read about the turning back of markets of materials goes to the contamination, and the contamination goes to not respecting what you're doing, not taking responsibility. That's it. I wanted to congratulate you, Peter. You got the book I told you to get.
Aubrey lent it to me. I'm returning it.
No, actually, I brought it in and asked you to share it with members after you read it, which I assume you did the first couple of days.
The first day.
Share it with other members. So
read it
that's
twice.
what
Yeah,
that
share with
was.
Until that shiny is worn off the
Yes.
outside,
That's right.
right?
And
If we think it's on the waste problem, trying to get rid of the honeysuckle waste down.
Yeah.
It's like
I've been trying
monthly
for
homework
about 10
assignment
years
for
at my house.
each member.
Can't do it.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate your patience.
Well, I appreciate everyone with bringing the information, Terry, Jeff, Peter, too. And I hope members of the committee and the public are able to come on June 9th and take what we've talked about here and share that with the council. After that, you know, because public input is going to be paramount to getting the recycling program that is important in Fayetteville, or keeping the one that we already have with the low contamination and helping educate others to participate in it in the right way, because we want quality participation, not just participation.
That is agenda session, right?
Yep.
Yep. So it's 4:30 in
There
this
won't be
room.
the opportunity to get public input at staff meeting.
I'll just raise
but
my hand and say,
everybody's welcome to-
I'll raise my hand and say, Mr. Mayor, those people want to talk.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's the idea to have it heard, it's gonna be broadcast, so at least we're trying to get the information out there on where we are at this point, so.
I know Fran's going to stand up, so.
And
I hope so.
I haven't
And
said
that's fine.
much.
I just wanted you to be aware, it's in
Thank
this
you.
room and it's not gonna be in the normal.
I haven't
Appreciate
said
it.
much as a scientist and an educator, but Fran, you were right on it. We've got to stop using this. It's too easy to have everyone just pitch it in a trash can and not think about it. And another key word, you know, a lot of this recycling is doom and gloom. What have we done? I went to a seminar at the university, and it's education and legislation. For instance, the Grand Canyon no longer sells plastic bottles, and those plastic bottles are subsidized from Pepsi or Coke, who were giving them large donations. And there was an outcry, and they said enough is enough, and they no longer do that. And so, thank you. I've been taking this all in, and I'm glad you added that viewpoint.
Appreciate it. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the new business. We have Elizabeth Bowen here to present an NWA open space plan from NWARPC.
Thank you.
And I'll let you explain the acronym because it's a long one.
Yes, it is. So, to begin with, I'm going to pass out a very small sheet of paper. I'd like everyone to take a copy. Go to our website, take the survey, fill out the map that tells us what your favorite open space place is, all your favorite open space places. Next, I'm going to pass out a brochure that talks about our workshops that we're having in June. Please take one back to your place of business and post it so everyone, you can get the word out to everyone. Here we go. Okay. And then last, if you do not have the ability to go to the website, I have the survey here that you can take tonight and just hand back to me, and I will make sure it gets fit into the system. So just take this if you can't do it online.
All of these were included in your packet as well, material for the meeting. So if you just, the down, up, down arrow, we're going to wheel
Okay.
the wheel on the mouse. Either one.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so I work for the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission out of Springdale. So, and we have received a grant to prepare an open space plan for Benton and Washington counties. So what that means is that we are trying to develop a coordinated voluntary, keep that word in mind, voluntary program to protect and promote the region's most valued natural landscapes and open spaces. So voluntary has been, I can't tell you how many people have said, I don't want you telling me where, what, why, for what needs to happen with someone's land or someone's particular location, that type of thing. This is a voluntary program. We're going to come up with a toolbox that will help individuals, groups, organizations be able to determine what needs to be preserved and how to preserve it. I'll kind of go through some of those different options. So the big picture, what makes us want to live in Northwest Arkansas? Thank you. That's all right. Okay, so some of the things, parks promote physical and mental health for people of all ages. Most all of us enjoy open space, probably at least a couple of times a week, whether we go to a park, walk on a trail, go outside and just, sit in our backyard. That helps our mental and physical capacity. Open space reduces stormwater management costs and protects our water sources. It also, so open space includes the lands for hunting, wildlife farms, scenic landscapes. It's our parks, it's our trails. It is anything that we deem open space or green infrastructure. So the economic benefits. So proximity to parks and open spaces enhance our residential property values. It attracts non-residential visitors to put dollars into our economy. The quality of parks and our landscapes brings in and attracts a good, high-quality workforce. So in these, this is not just something that we've come up with. I mean, there's been studies. The Trust for Public Land has studied this and has, we're using that as one of our answers as to why this is beneficial. So think about the big picture. So in 1960, look at Northwest Arkansas. Look at what we looked like in 2010. Okay, so I'm going to pop back one.
Yeah, do that.
And look at that in 40 years. Now let's look at just Benton, Washington County. So here's 1992, 2001, 2006, and 2011. Okay, so I'll go back again. So 92, pretty significant change. So with that change, what I'm asking you to think about is what kinds of open space did we lose? Did we lose something cultural, historical? We may not have lost anything that we felt like was valuable that we wanted to preserve, but most likely we did. And that's why we want to come up with a forethought that we preserve things now so that we don't lose them with this new population growth that we're going to experience. So here's just a couple of examples of what open space we have in Northwest Arkansas. So we have our national parks, we have lots of rural landscapes, and we have the Razorback Greenway, for example, that has just opened. That's beautiful open space. It's gone up and down the corridor through 6 cities. We have parks, rivers, lakes. We have a lot of things that we should be very grateful for in Northwest Arkansas. So another big picture item. This is conservation funds from 1989 that have been approved by state and local measures. Look at 2014, $13 billion. So people are recognizing the benefits of open space and conservation. There are lots of plans across the country. We are taking these plans and we're going to use anything that we can. Northwest Arkansas is definitely different than any of these places that you see on this list, but we're going to take advantage of what others have done in the past. So the planning process that we're going through. The project was initiated back in November. We're about halfway through. So June 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th is when we will have our next public workshops. So we're at number 4. We're starting number 5. So number 6, 7, and 8 will be through November. So just kind of how this is working. So the very smallest circle there, the darkest blue, is our office. Then we have our steering committee. We have 25 people from lots of different organizations that are guiding this process. We have a company called Alta Greenway that is our consultant. We have many, many, many stakeholders. I have about 150 groups on my list in Benton and Washington counties that are listed as stakeholders for this particular green space plan. And then, of course, we have the general public and all the different aspects of how we're reaching out to that public. So some of the public involvement. We have the website that I've passed out a sheet for you to go to. Under the Participate tab is where we would like to see you go do the survey and then also this online input map. So here, we want you to go and mark all of the spaces, all of the places that you either like as open space now or that you think it should be preserved. Lots of people have put different farms, different rural landscapes that they believe they would like to see preserved for Northwest Arkansas. So out of the comments that we had received through the end of March, we had 354 unique comments on that map. Lots of them are, the typical things, the Devil's Den, Hobbs State, all of those types of things. But you saw lots of different wildlife areas, farms, gardens, campsites. So we're getting pretty good participation so far. We are also on Facebook. We have, as of today, that shows 411, but we are at 518 surveys, which for an open space plan, I've been doing public input for a lot of years. We are doing very well on getting public input. 500 surveys for a plan like this is very good. My goal is 1,000. We'll see if I meet it by the end of September. So the survey that we passed out, the very front sheet, number 1, asks the following examples. What do you feel is important in terms of open space in Northwest Arkansas? So this is a ranking of what people have answered. So number 1, natural areas that support walking, hiking, biking, and exploring. That yellow bar is what is showing that is what people believe is most important. So the blue bar, which is the one next just to the right, that's where they've marked that it's important. And then the kind of orange would be neutral, and the gray people believe is not important. So if you go down through that list, the last item, areas for horseback riding and four-wheeling, is showing to be the least important to the groups of people that have answered this survey so far. So it's just kind of interesting to see some of the results that we've seen thus far. So 99.9% have answered yes, they would like to see us work together as communities. We've had one out of that 518 that has stated they do not believe communities working together is valuable.
How many did you say?
One.
Oh, one.
Yeah.
That's good.
So far. I mean, this is a public input process, and, there are lots of different ideas on how things should be. So one of the questions is, what in your opinion defines the character of Northwest Arkansas? The word beauty was on 87 surveys. So 30% of the surveys had the word beauty in that area where they could just write what information they felt like defines this character. So you can kind of see the list of items. So here's our demographics.
Yes.
Yep.
Growing.
That Northwest Arkansas is growing.
Or just like buzzwords.
That's a
Yeah.
value that they,
No, that is a word that they have put in
Oh,
that
okay.
in that structure.
okay, gotcha.
So on the survey, it's just an area where they can write. Okay. So what is your connection with Northwest Arkansas? You can see that most people live here, some work, some vacation, some own businesses. So out of the surveys that we've received, Fayetteville, 28%. Bentonville, 13%. So Fayetteville, you've definitely had the biggest participation in the survey. As far as the age group, by the end of February, we did not have one person 19 or under that had filled out this survey. We only had a couple in the 20 to 29. So we've kind of put out an effort to make sure that our younger generation is telling us what's important. So we've had 2 workshops already. In January, we had 157 participants. One workshop was here at the City of Fayetteville Library. The other was at the Bentonville Library. Lots of good participation. At that workshop, we had several maps that we had laid out that we gave people dots where they could mark their favorite spaces or open spaces, just like what we're asking you to do online. 250 places were marked on those maps on those 2 different nights. So February, we had the stakeholder interviews. So out of the 150 or so that I have on the stakeholder list, we invited 3 people from 7 different kind of categories in to do interviews with us to answer questions. So that occurred in February. In March, we had tours of several open spaces, sites that are currently being preserved or are being looked at to be preserved. Mount Kessler was one that I had not been to. That's one that the City of Fayetteville has participated in making sure is being preserved. Beautiful, beautiful place. So in March, we had resource groups. I know, Garnet, you participated in that. Several other city officials participated in that from the City of Fayetteville. We had 5 different categories: the natural environment, heritage, built environment, outreach, and implementation. Different ways that we had them give us input. Where did they believe that growth was going to happen? Where are opportunities or constraints for open space and development problems? So the goal for this open space plan is to come up with a toolbox. How can we preserve a particular location for a particular reason? So whatever the priority is for that location, how can we preserve it? Whether it be purchase it, put a conservation easement on it, put a right for first refusal, meaning that maybe they don't want to allow something to go on that property now, but if it is going to be put up for sale, then the organization, maybe a board, would be first to be notified if that property was to become available. So we have about 25 different items that we've already have kind of in our list that we will give good guidance on how to use those. And hopefully, in these next set of workshops, we'll gain more input on how to create a bigger, better toolbox. So we've had lots of news media releases. Fran, you did an excellent article. We got lots of good feedback from the article that you did. So our project schedule, Like I said, we're midway through, we're in June. By November, we should have our final plan. We'll have 2 public input sessions on that final plan. And then by March, we plan to have an action item initiation where we actually preserve or have some particular location that we're trying to preserve, making sure that we're going through the process. So the next steps for our mapping and prioritization, we're updating the maps that we used in January for our June workshops. We've received lots and lots of good data from different resources based on those workshops. This is just kind of a list of different things that was passed on to us in those workshops. So we are going to prioritize the information that we receive. We will rank different areas as high value resource, medium value, or there will be areas of priority where you have overlapping. So say you have a water resource and a natural or a cultural resource and land resources. Where those overlap, those would become a higher priority for conservation, for example. And this is just a simplified example of how this could work. So we also have to be very aware of our habitat. So whether we have hubs for habitat, corridors so that they can, animals can migrate from one location to another. We need to determine where those are and how we make sure that those stay intact or that we actually increase some of those. So how can you get involved? These next 5 slides are just kind of input quotes from members of the public that we received on these surveys. So it's important that we retain open spaces in the midst of our growth. So that's one of the where those growth terms came from. Someone thinks that it's incredibly important to have attractions for our young people. Glad it is being looked at before it is too late. I've heard that many, many, many times. Open space parks, hiking trails, campsites are very important for the future of the state and the people who live here. Save the farms, orchards, not just the wilderness. So I believe this initiative is so, so important. We lived here for 9 years and seen the area change dramatically. Too little thought is being given to the preservation of the natural landscape. So the last thing, I just want to reemphasize that why we're doing this plan is so that we can preserve whatever we need to, and that's all up to you guys. I mean, it's up to everyone here in Northwest Arkansas to determine what needs to be preserved. We will put the toolbox together on how to preserve it, and we need that input. January 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th. So, any questions?
I have a question. So, if you, since this is voluntary, developers, sell their land, or they get the land, they want to sell it, make their money, but there's usually parks and recs. There's some kind of land from that development that needs to be set aside for parks and recs. And so can you act, or can your company, or do you know something that would get, that you could talk to, work with developers to make sure that the land that they're conserving is the important land and not just a retention pond built in some, oh, that's green space, or that's offsetting wetland destruction or mitigation and whatnot. Do you have a plan for working with developers maybe, or?
So that is in the education piece,
Okay.
the outreach and education. We definitely are, the city of Fayetteville is doing a pretty good job at even, you have was it a park dedication?
Parkland dedication
Yeah.
ordinance, so what you're referring to is when developments come through, developers either required to set aside a certain amount of acreage per unit, or in a lot of instances, they can provide money in lieu of acreage, and that goes to the city's Parks and Recreation Department for either investment in existing parkland space or investment in new parkland space, so they can try to acquire larger tracts of land where parks already exist, i.e. the recent purchase at Gully Park where they expanded Gully Park by a couple of acres by purchasing some adjacent land to that park.
Well, and so, tomorrow, this is an example, so tomorrow at the city council meeting, they're gonna be rezoning the south end of Rupel Road. And this is the property that's 643 acres, right next to Woolsey Wet Prairie Sanctuary, which is an important birding area. It has lots of really great animals and a species conservation concern there. And that property is gonna be, or the property to be rezoned is gonna eventually be home to 5,000 new houses. And they, the rezoning, or it's going through rezone tomorrow. And what I've been going to the public, planning commission meetings, and I've tried to help say, okay, this area would be really good for conservation of the species, and that's going to be incorporated for developers to take into consideration. But these parcels are going to be parceled out. Multiple different developers are going to be developing that whole area. So is there a way to get the developers working together, or could you be like an intermediary for those kind of things? Because it's an important area to me and a lot of other people.
Right.
Of course.
Well, finding out about those locations and the city planners and developers, I mean, they are going to already have and will continue to implement regulation to assist in those types of things. We, just as a community, like yourself going to these meetings, we have to express those needs and concerns and what we feel is important.
Okay.
But definitely the outreach and education is a huge piece to this.
And I'll just add to that. I know you mentioned the Rupel Road rezoning. Tomorrow's just the first reading, and we're going to actually be talking about that rezoning at this committee next month in June. So I can't promise it wouldn't go through tomorrow night in one reading because I'm only one council member, but the staff is requesting that it be not taken through more than one reading, and I definitely support holding it because we're not in a hurry. So
I was just wondering if that kind of company could maybe be like a stitching thing for the developers or something like that. That's all I wanted to.
We've had some discussions about that in this committee before, and we're not sure how to tackle that ourselves yet. And that's come up a couple of different rezoning areas where it'd be great to protect, but we don't have the power to stop the banks from, selling the property, and not the power to stop the developers from making their money. And, so we're not sure how to address that either yet. But that's something we've been talking about, and that's one of the reasons we invited Elizabeth, was to see if we can come up, help, or come up with a plan that would help focus efforts better and not lose all these, critical pieces of property and habitats and stuff.
and I'm going to touch on that a little bit
Yeah.
more after this part too, but it'll be something.
I will say that sometimes a group will get together and buy the land. And I think that's probably what you're
Yes.
talking about too.
That's definitely one of the
Because
items.
it's so important for that land to be preserved. So and I've seen that happen in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So.
And what was, I think I'm trying to lead into a good thing here, I hope I am. What was the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission's involvement in the Razorback Greenways? You guys helped drive that, didn't you? Was that part of?
Yeah. So we applied for the Tiger II grant. The Walton Family Foundation provided the matching funds, which was an 80-20 match, and the foundation actually added additional funds besides just the 20% match. And all those contracts, and that $32 or $4 million came through our office, and we're hopefully getting the signs is the last thing.
Yeah,
that's gonna
I was thinking you guys were instrumental, and I wasn't positive. So that's a cool thing. These are the right people, the right group to have at the table, and they've got excellent connections and history of making things happen. So, yeah, hopefully we're heading in the right direction with this.
Any other questions, comments?
I really appreciate you putting all this together and all your hard work on that. I filled out a survey for you while I was reading the survey to see kind of what the scope was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be good information. I'm sure you could reach your 1,000 easily, but it might be heavily skewed towards Fayetteville.
Yes.
Because we are the best community here.
I won't deny, since that's where I'm sitting. And I lived
Shame
here
all your
during the
Facebook
incinerator
friends
problem.
Yeah, exactly.
On your online thing, I went to sticking the sticky dots on the maps and all that
Uh-huh.
stuff. But is that part of what you can do online? Because I don't think I've done.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so,
Yes.
okay, I've thought that was.
Yeah,
So
so
the
when you-
neat thing about that is, like, even if there's an empty lot in your neighborhood, that's cool. You know, you can put a virtual sticky dot on that and say, hey, this would be neat to protect, or, you know, if there's some creek, you know, down the street or,
Yeah.
around, you know, that's the kind of stuff they want, so go online and do that survey.
So, I do have another question, because I was thinking of a piece of property that I know that people in Fayetteville worry about sometimes. And so, that's part of what you guys are looking at, too.
Mhm.
It would be a really awesome green space. It's
So-
owned by a church right now, but it's always kind of, and it would be a developer's dream,
Mhm.
neighbor's nightmare, so.
So I have people call anonymously. I've had letters in the mail without
Okay.
names notifying me. There's supposed to be a place out towards Cave Springs that has some kind of sketching of a Bible that people believe. I've gotten 3 calls about that, where people believe that that particular site should be preserved. And it's gone, it's passed down to the grandson, and so I'll be, trying to make that contact and see.
So
if
you're
that's-
just looking at it, it's owned by somebody, but it's just, okay, good, that's
And
good to know.
whether we just put a conservation easement, where maybe that can never be developed or destroyed. There's lots of different things to look at.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised about how many people are willing to talk to you about preserving something that is important to a lot of people. Just like a farm, when I started, this particular project, the rural farming community is one that has, expressed the greatest amount of concern, for good reason. But yet, they are some of the people that have said, I would be willing to put my property in conservation easement, so it would not be that 500 homes, 20 years from now. And make sure that it will always be, preserved for wildlife or farming, so that we'd have that open space landscape. And, there's, I think, 4 different locations, that a place at Elm Springs, where just since I started this project in November, that they've gone into the conservation easement of the spring that started Elm Springs. So that will not only be conserved, but they're going to make it into a park and hopefully a few other things that they've got on their agenda. So we've got several examples that are already in the process. Someone's wanting to donate, I think 12 or 20 acres out at Sulphur Springs. But there's requirements. They'll donate the land upon death, or they'll put it in a conservation easement now, as long as a trail goes on it. Well, and that's kind of hard to do if you don't have money for the trail and you don't have a way to make sure that's going to happen in a given time period. But he's willing, to do those things. We can come up with some funding to get that to where it can happen. So one of the things that, has not come out of this yet is, will we have a board that will, take consideration, have a tax where money will come to a particular organization that would be used for a 50-50 match for purchasing land or installing trails or anything like that. And that is what, after this workshop, these 4 days of workshops, that'll be some of the next very close steps after that, is how will this work? How will it be implemented?
And these are day workshops? just
They
in
are
different
evening,
places?
yes.
Evening,
Yeah, there are 4 workshops of the same thing in 4 different locations.
Okay.
So, okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
So
hard
I'll-
work on that.
I'll take your surveys. Anyone that wants to-
Oh, we were supposed to.
No, only if you are not
I
going
know,
to be able to go
pass our
online.
test.
Oh, I already
Yeah.
did it. Okay, same,
They sound
it's
on
the
it.
same thing. Okay, good. I'm gonna keep this.
It's double-sided though.
In the backside has your name on
Have
it.
you got
Yeah.
enough minutes to spare
You want
a
some?
few of these?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
all of those.
so we might get.
I know we've kind of gone longer tonight than we normally do. So I wanted to let you all know kind of what we had discussed at the last meeting, and Peter and I discussed this last week. We had talked about how to create a zoning category and, you know, how we would frame that discussion. And we had ended up the last meeting deciding on a survey, and Peter and I thought that we could discuss different areas of concern at the committee level that then Peter and I could take and craft those areas of concerns into questions that can be related to areas for discussion in zoning creation. Because we'll have to work together with planning to create the questions. But I think at this point, it'd be great if each one of you could just take 5 or 10 minutes, you know, when you get home or sometime this weekend or week, and just email those areas of concern that you wanted to address in the survey to Jeremy and I, or I'm sorry, not Jeremy, Peter and I. And then during the June meeting, we're going to be discussing a rezoning for the Rupel Road area at this committee meeting. And so we'll use that meeting as kind of a framework for that discussion, and also discuss some of those concerns then.
Is this about what Peter sent us about the zoning?
Yes.
Fayetteville? Okay.
And this is there's a 4-page memo from Kit, and I really wanted everybody to kind of get a chance to read through
that was
this
good.
before they sent their thoughts. And this is what the city of Fayetteville generally can look at when creating zoning districts. So it's important that everybody kind of have a little bit of that institutional knowledge before they suggest things that may be concerns or areas that they want us to identify, because certain things we can't really look at anymore in the state of Arkansas when creating zoning districts after the last legislative session especially.
There's a lot of good legal precedent that was listed on the last page regarding the state level.
Yes.
I did
Yeah,
not know anything
yeah.
about
Yeah, I have a couple of, I guess, questions about it. He mentions the term discretion a couple of
Which
times.
page are you at?
He
Well,
does.
page 1, last paragraph, the city council has much more discretion when considering a rezoning plan than when it would be appealed. Then if you go over on page 2 in the first paragraph, farther down in the paragraph, thus, if the city council wishes to exercise its discretion about what will be built on land, and again, the city council should exercise its discretion at the time of rezoning. So discretion to me is where you decide between alternatives. You know, someone is presenting, and I'm kind of in the middle of thinking about this and wondered if you had any comments at this point. We are giving input to the council while it is exercising its strongest opportunity for discretion.
Well, we're talking about either the possible creation of a new zoning category or maybe an ordinance similar to the LID ordinance for conservation. That could be an option to use. I mean, the city council, you know, the 8 elected people, along with the mayor who can break a tie, have 100% discretion on voting on what we choose to be the zoning.
Sure,
I mean,
they have
that
100.
Someone can apply for a rezoning and we can amend it and change it to something else. So that's, when it comes to discretion, that's, I think what it's getting to is that, you know, even though someone applies for downtown general, we get to change their application to multifamily RSF4 or whatever we wanted to, basically. That's so.
So discretion is still
Don't
within a
use-
limited
don't-
number of options.
Yeah, but we have to use the, you know, what, on page 3, we have to use those, you know, those state statutes, and we have to be able to substantiate our votes based on Arkansas precedents and law, because there's certain things we can't consider.
Well, I don't see me personally having any better ideas than the people who have got all this experience, the council, right? And so in a situation where we're looking at something had a PZD, now it needs to be rezoned, likely the council has a good idea of where to go.
Well, what we're asking for as a council on some of these rezonings is input from people who are more qualified than some people on the council in the area of environmental concern. That's why, you know, there's a city council appointee to this committee, is because we kind of want our ears in this committee. We want to know what's happening and what the opinions are.
So are you trying to add, I was not at the last meeting, but you're trying to add some environmental things that are not on here to it? Is that what you're saying, as far as what we're recommending to you, something that maybe wasn't?
So at the
Has that
last
been
meeting, we
addressed?
taled about, you were at the meeting before.
Yes, I was, and
then
yeah,
at the
oh, yeah,
last-
yeah, yeah.
At the last meeting, we kind of boiled that discussion down to what we could recommend.
Okay,
Um,
okay, I got you.
And then we decided
I
that we
read
were
the
going to
minutes, but-
pursue looking at the potential for the creation of a new zoning district. But that we would need to frame that discussion in a way that it could be done very efficiently and precisely, and kind of come up with a good rubric, you know, for that creation. And something that Peter and I discussed is the need to determine exactly what the committee wants to address. What are the concerns? So if y'all do that and send us those concerns, we can boil them down into those questions that really get to that, so that we can hopefully glean some good responses from some surveys by, you know, sending it to Omni, the Sierra Club, you know, some stakeholders in our community that know as much about the environmental concerns and different aspects as we do. You know, Fayetteville Natural Heritage, to name a few.
So just general examples might be areas of concern like specific habitat protection, or some cultural
I'd be as
something, or historic,
specific as you can.
anything. I mean, that kind of stuff could be
Yeah.
conceivably.
I would think even in the specific, I remember a couple meetings ago when Aubrey and Richard were talking about the property development down over on, you know, near East and Martin Luther King down there, those new townhomes that they just destroyed, some old trees. But it's also a horrible flood zone too.
Right.
So, you know, stipulation could be now what kind of developments within that zone are allowed based on, you know, floodplains, you know, irrigation, stuff like that, soil. I mean, it's various things that could actually truly affect not only the environment, but the development long-term should be considered instead of just the quick buck. Because it actually becomes more costly in the long run for the city if they ever have to take over the property again.
So whether we think it, I mean, it can be kind of a dream list too. Is that what you're saying, or do you want us to be realistic
I
about
mean,
this?
let's try to keep it to areas that can. That's why I wanted everybody to read Kit's memo.
Yeah,
You know,
I did do that.
and
You know,
and be very, just kind of look at your concerns. What are your concerns in Fayetteville with zoning
Okay.
that you think we're lacking? And what are your areas that we could address probably?
So me and a lab member, we've put together a petition on change.org and got signatures, and we have some information on it. And we also got a letter from the Audubon Society.
Mhm.
With Audubon Society?
Yeah.
Would that be something beneficial for you guys for your reading, or?
What is the petition for?
Well, it's actually, the petition's for having some kind of zoning option that is a conservation option. We don't really, as far as I've learned from meeting, we don't really have a zonation for conservation or something like that. And even though it realistically probably would just be a suggestion, it would still be something that people could consider when they're developing an area too.
Yeah, if you want to send me that the link or whatever it is, I'll make sure that it gets to everybody on the committee. I'll send it
That would
to
be good.
Peter and
Thank you.
the city council, and you can get my email address off the city website. But I think I gave it to you when we talked that day. So, yeah.
So, excuse me, you're a graduate student at biology or?
Yeah. Amphibian ecology.
Frank?
It's a carton,
I saw you.
horse and cart, cart and horse problem. You know, the city really needs to understand that before they zone or allow development or go planning, needs to identify the function of that piece of property. Poor Aubrey here has devoted his life to this, and we still are not at the point where before something is allowed to be anywhere, if it's a floodplain, if it's a wetland, if it's a, we did get the hillside ordinance, fought long and hard for the hillside ordinance, but the function of the land, it's not all like this tabletop, you know, that first needs to be known. What's there? What is living on that land? And I think that people are so afraid that it's an overstepping of government, but when you're living in a community and one person's actions can impact you severely, it's part of living together. So land function, think land function.
Good comment. Thank you.
It is, and Joe Neal brought that out really well.
He gave a
Woolsey
great
wet prairie.
presentation.
Yeah,
Well,
I
sticks
was
with me
worried
forever.
about those salamanders for days afterwards.
Good for you.
Yes, I
If-
was. I mean, he was,
if you watch
he's
Arkansas
well
Darter,
said
got
and
it.
well done. For someone who is not, does not come from that background, but wants to learn as much as possible. So,
If you watch the March meeting, you can see, oh, you were here. You
yeah,
were
I
here,
think you
that's
were
right,
at that
yeah.
meeting, yes.
Mark, that was a great presentation you
Yes,
gave, I thought.
it really was. It was a little horrifying. I mean, in a good way.
They said it was
but-
the brimstone from the
Yeah,
Baptist.
It was quite good.
It was
So,
good.
Well,
We
so-
need to hear that.
And also, you don't have to watch the whole meeting. I always put these
Yeah.
meetings and a lot of the committee meetings on YouTube, so they're available too.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've got Joe's part clipped out. It's like 36 minutes of Joe preaching at his best.
It was a good sermon.
It was, it was.
Okay, is it, how do I get, is it Joe
It's
Neal?
under my name.
Oh,
Joe
okay.
Shepherd,
Okay.
YouTube channel.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get it.
Search Joe Neal, probably.
Because I've certainly quoted him several times.
Yeah, me too. For years.
Well, if y'all can put some ideas together in the next week or so and send those to Peter and myself, we'll put them together into some questions and bring them back to the committee. And like I said, in June, we're going to be discussing the rezoning for the Rupel Road, south end of that. So please bring your thinking hats. We're going to have
And
planning
that's
here.
next to Woolsey, is that right? That
Very,
borders?
it's close, yes,
Okay.
very close.
Is it, I mean, how close is it to like MLK and the new park and all that?
Intersects with MLK.
So it's right down
Yeah,
there.
MLK to Weddington, that section, but it's gonna be
I
the
would say,
southernmost.
actually, MLK to
But Persimmon.
Persimmon.
Persimmon, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so from
Just Persimmons are, Persimmon to Weddington.
mostly west of Rupel, a little bit on the east side of Rupel.
Which is right in our Enduring Green network, I think. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the way out to about Broyles,
Mhm.
which Woolsey is on the other side of Broyles.
Yeah. But we'll have, Blake, we'll have the city attorney, assistant city attorney here, and we'll have Andrew Garner here. So we'll,
Have you talked to the city attorney's office about that?
they said they'd be here for all rezonings, so if, I'll talk to him tomorrow. That hasn't come up yet, so. Well, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I know we went a little longer than normal again. It just seems to be,
becoming
it
normal.
seems just to be the way it is, so, that's
And to
okay
think
with
we're
me if
working
it's okay
on
with y'all.
splitting this
So,
into bi-monthly
anyway,
meetings.
does anyone have any announcements before we adjourn?
Garden tour of Peace Gardens and somewhat part of our nature gardens on this weekend. Saturday, I believe, from, what is it, 10 to 4 or something like that. But anyway, it's advertised online,
Yeah, I think it's on Facebook or something.
yeah.
I think there might even be some little flyer things downstairs on the table right when
Yeah.
you walk in.
Yeah.
So on your way out, you can look for them, I think.
We printed those on the back of our World Peace, our Earth Day thing, on the back of the tour, so I just forgot the times and so forth, but it's this coming weekend.
It'd be nice if you take the EAC out during the week sometime. We could- I'd like to see it. I'm seldom here on weekends, but I'd like to take the tour sometime.
Well, I'm outdoors on mostly prairie parcels, just about every day, heat of the summer and all, so
Okay, just find you on the prairie.
call me. Just call me.
He'll find
Mr.
it.
Bobo.
Okay, okay.
I'm going out there anyway if I'm able, so.
Okay.
I like to
And
share.
he's armed with his camera.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
You will show up on YouTube if you
Well, thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and adjourn, and we'll see y'all next month.